Hello, you are listening to the All Girls School podcast. I'm your host, Victoria Barrett, a graduate from an all-women's college in Virginia. This podcast aims to highlight the diverse experiences and life journeys of graduates from all-women's colleges. Listeners can expect to hear candid conversations about a wide variety of topics. This podcast strives to be in an inclusive space, so some guests may identify themselves as non-binary or trans. I hope you're ready, because class is about to start. All right. Hello, my name is Victoria Barrett. I'm the host of the All Girls School podcast. Welcome back to another episode. I'm really excited. We've already persevered through some technological challenges today, but I have my guest for this week. Her name is Alessandra Gonzalez-Rivera. She was part of the class after me. And I'm just really excited to have you here. Thank you for joining. And do you mind sharing your pronouns with us?
Yeah, so she and her.
Awesome. And can you share what your class is as well? I know it, but I'm trying to do better. I'm trying to do better at introducing.
2014, no class of 2014. So it's about to hit 10 years this year.
Ooh, 10 years. That was me last year. I get it. The 10-year mark. Ooh, makes you feel a certain way. That's for sure. But yeah, so kind of the way I like to start these interviews, and I know you said you've listened to some, is to kind of have you take us back before college. What were you like? Where did you grow up? What were your goals before going to college?
Yeah, so honestly, I was something else before college. I was a bit of a troublemaker. If you ever see my mom, she'll just tell you all these horror stories and everything terrible I put her through. I was good at school though. But before I was born in Hawaii, I was kind of raised all around the South. So Tennessee, Kentucky, Texas, all over Texas. Um, but I was a bit of a handful because I was the youngest of five. And I was just kind of everywhere. And I went to three high schools. So it was always kind of different moving from one to the next. And before I went to Mary Baldwin, I had only been at that high school for a year and it was just my senior year. So I was kind of just doing my own thing. I didn't really have interest because I was busy getting in trouble. So that was kind of my priority at that time.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, it's such a different time, and I've been teaching middle school, so I totally understand that. It's you are going through school, you don't really know what you want, and that's the time to get into a little bit of trouble, if I'm honest. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm lucky I got it out of my system.
Yeah.
I will say that. I kind of look back at it. I don't regret getting in trouble as much because I'm very grateful that I got in trouble and I learned a lot then. And when I transitioned to college, I won't lie, my freshman year, I was still getting into a little bit of trouble, but it wasn't as bad.
Yeah. So, that being said, you said your last year in high school was the only year that you were there. How did you discover Mary Baldwin?
So I actually wanted to go to Annapolis,
Mm.
um, and I had every intention of joining the Navy. But at the same time, I didn't want to join the military. I was at a very weird part. But again, I was very good at school. So I applied to honestly every college that sent me a letter, I just applied. And my heart was set on Annapolis. But funny story, the day of my prom or the night of my prom, I decided I didn't want to go to Annapolis anymore because I was temperamental. And I told my dad, I don't want to do this anymore. And he was like, well, where are you going to go? And we got in a big fight. And I literally picked up a letter. I didn't see where it was to. And I was like, I'm going here. And I just gave it to him. And I actually never Googled Mary Baldwin. I had never seen pictures of it really. I didn't know it was an all girls school. It was quite a surprise. When my dad, he was like, okay, this is what you want. I'll take you there. And we flew into New York. And so I thought the school was in New York. And I was like, oh, I'm going to New York. That's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
you're like, wow, lucky.
And we saw my family and we started driving more south. And I was like, where are we actually going? And we pulled up to Stanton, and I was like, oh, this is not anywhere near New York. And okay, I guess I'm doing this then. But I didn't even know, honestly. I just kind of went with it. My main goal at that time was to get out of Texas. And so I only applied to other states.
Mhm.
I did apply to 2 schools in Texas, but I knew I didn't want to stay in Texas. I knew I wanted to be out of state just to get away from that kind of area because, again, I was getting in trouble all the time. And so I just went with it.
Yeah, hard to get in trouble in Stanton, Virginia. It's very tricky.
Not impossible.
Not you're like, bet.
Oh, just asking for you, my sister knows.
Yeah. I don't doubt it, I don't doubt it. So, once you got to Mary Baldwin and you were there and you were in VWIL, what was that experience like for you, especially, like, since you originally were thinking Navy? How did things change once you were actually at Mary Baldwin?
So when I first got there, I wasn't really sure how I fit into everything, to be
Mhm.
truthful. I still kind of had my terrible streak going on for me. And I was a little, obviously, I was very surprised that it was a very small school. I was expecting
Mhm.
maybe something a little bit bigger. And so I just really dove into academics and I knew what I wanted my major to be. And that's kind of where I put all my focus. I knew that I couldn't be in the Navy as soon as I got into Mary Baldwin and I went to VWIL and, they saw my hand tattoos and they were like, no, you can't be here.
Oh,
And I was piercings and gauges and I was everything else. And so I kind of went into the Army because they were like, well, the Army will take
yeah.
you. And I honestly, I was just like, I'm just gonna see how this flows and kind of go with it. My first year, I had very high grades, but I was struggling a bit on the I wouldn't say I was struggling in the social aspect, but I was still very much wanting a bigger university and kind of that more city feel, I
Yeah.
guess. And so I was questioning about transferring, and so I was
Mhm.
going to transfer um, potentially over to Louisiana. But during the freshman year, especially with VWIL, I got very, very close with my sister
Yeah.
Knowles. Very close, probably because we were always in trouble. But I got very close with them. And so I decided to kind of give it another year and see if I still didn't like it. And then I could switch out halfway through. But I was also paying my way through college,
Mhm.
working. Freshman year, I worked at the pub and then I was a TA for a lot of classes. So I was also thinking about that financial aspect of how am I going to get my stuff from point A to point B. And honestly, that's kind of where the Army came in. And I was like, well, if I enlist, they can pay for it all.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, that's the best part about like Army ROTC is just like the opportunities to have college paid for in one way, shape, or form. Like there's many avenues. And I'm very grateful for that opportunity too. Like it makes a huge difference not having to worry as much about like how you're gonna pay for school. Cause I mean, Mary Baldwin ain't cheap.
Oh no, as an out of state, it was expensive.
Yeah. It's pricey. Um so yeah, you mentioned that your sister Noel class was very tight. I remember the other day you were telling me it was because y'all were always on confinement. And I'm like, huh, why were y'all always on confinement? Like, I'm like, dang, were y'all that bad? Like, because
Yeah,
I feel like y'all
we were
matured really well.
We were on confinement all the time.
Yeah.
And what the worst thing is like out of all because we would get in shenanigans as Sister
Mhm.
Knowles. So
Yeah.
don't do this. I'm going to put an asterisk, do not do. But there was that one time we were going to take a mass APFT and PT test on the track. And so me and my sister Knowles had the bright idea, let's go ice the track. Because if there's ice on the track, we can't take it. And we wore our VWIL gear, like nobody's gonna know. And we did it. And I don't, we never got on confinement for that. And PT test was canceled, thank God. But we just, I don't know why we always got on confinement, but we did. We were just always in trouble. And that kind of brought us a little bit closer and kind of forcing us to you gotta live along with the people who are there because they're all you have and they're all you can see at this point.
Yeah. I was also thinking about COVID. I was like, wow, that was like practice for COVID if you think about it in a way. Except, in COVID, you're stuck with whoever's in your house. Whereas at Baldwin, at least you have all of your sister-in-laws. That,
Yeah, but like getting sick at the same time was definitely crazy
yeah.
because all of us would it was the worst. It
Yeah.
was the worst.
And as far as why you might have been on confinement, I feel like that is like a senior thing. Like, I feel like that might be your Calyx class fault. Like, I feel like they have a lot of sway. So
I
I
don't
don't feel
know if we
like,
ever blamed them though. I
I don't
think
know. But
I think
looking,
we always probably blamed your class. Like you guys are the
probably,
reason for our confinement.
because we were the sophomores. Yeah, I would assume. Yeah, like if you're gonna blame anyone, blame us. Like we're the easy target.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we did blame your class, but and for the life of me, like I just can't remember why. Like, but I do know we were on it for a very long time though.
Hey, but it made your class like incredibly tight because I know you were saying like there are a lot of ways that you still stay in touch. Can you kind of like share how y'all like maintain that bond 10 years later?
Well, so I think it kind of starts with like we still have our Facebook page that we created when we were Knowles, and we're
Mhm.
still very active on it. I think POS has the main contributions on that page. We do try to update each other on like the biggest things that happen in our life. A lot of us are
Mhm.
moms now. Some of us have started their own businesses, and we're everywhere. And so we still share kind of the big things that we're doing in our life on that page. And then we try to do trips as much as possible. We did a huge New Orleans trip as Sister Knowles, which was a lot of
Ooh.
fun. And it was definitely like we were back at college.
I was gonna say New Orleans sounds like a good place to get into some trouble.
It was a lot of fun. We tried to do as many activities as we could, but I think one thing with my class is like we don't judge each other for not being able to do something. So
Yeah.
like if you can't do it, like we all understand there's a lot going on. And it's not always possible. And then we did like last New Year's, we did a breakfast and coffee with everyone who is kind of in this area in Virginia. Um, and then like Sikorsky and I, we did a Peloton class last week
Aw.
together. Um, and then we have a Sister Knoll book club. So like we understand that we've all kind of grown and our interests aren't necessarily the same, but we're all on different pages. And so we try to meet at least once a month, if we can. And we open it, and that I think that's one thing I love about my class is like it's not just the Sister Knowles who graduated with us, because a lot of them haven't,
Mhm.
or they didn't graduate with us. They didn't finish their VWIL kind of time, but we still consider them as Sister Knowles. And so they're still on our page. They're in our book club. We still invite them. Like we're still very much Sister Knowles, regardless if they graduated with us or not. And I think that's kind of understanding that kind of kept us together a little bit more.
Yeah. I think that's a good mindset to have too, because our class was, by the time we graduated, we were very tiny. So like we have a lot of sister Knowles that like may not have completed the program, but like I still call a sister Knoll because they are. Like at the end of the day, we all struggled through that together.
Yeah, that first year was the toughest.
Yeah. Yep, it gets you. Oh, speaking of 10 years and the fact that y'all get together all the time, do y'all have plans to like attend the reunion?
That was a big discussion on our Sister Noel page the last 2 weeks, by the way. Pops actually brought it up, but there's the VWIL reunion, and then there's the
Mhm.
Mary Baldwin reunion.
Yeah.
And we were all kind of talking about, okay, which one are we going to? If we're going to commit to one, which one are we committing to?
Yeah.
I think most of us are committing to probably the Mary Baldwin one, just because the VWIL one, it's on FTX, and I am not
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
But a lot of us have a lot going on at that time. So the Mary Baldwin one kind of opens us up a little bit more and
Mhm.
gives us more time to plan. So, but that is still an ongoing discussion in our Sister Noel page.
Yeah. No, I get that. If I could have gone last year, I would have, but I was still in Colorado and I was at my annual training, so I couldn't go. But I would have
Yes.
gone if I could have. I am going to the VWIL oriented like reunion, but I can't
Oh,
go to everything. So I'm excited for that.
I think it'll be fun. Like
Yeah.
it's in April, so I'll be out
Mhm.
with all the cadets, so I
Yeah.
won't get a chance to actually go there. But I know a lot of people are planning on going.
Oh, very cool. Yeah. You'll be out playing Army.
Yep.
All right. Since graduating, what have some of your experiences been?
I've kind of been a little bit of everywhere. So I ended up commissioning field artillery, and I've been very fortunate that I've kind of experienced a lot of bits of field artillery. My first duty station was Fort Liberty, and I was extremely grateful that I was actually stationed there with Becca Mayberry. She was originally VWIL, but she didn't stay with the class. And she was there, and her wife and I ended up having our sons together, really
That's so
just like a few
cool.
days or a week apart. And so I had kind of that going for me. And then I went to Oklahoma to Fort Sill, and I had my sister Noel Greiser there with me. And she was in Dallas, but I got to see her every time I went to go visit my parents. Um, and then from there, I went to Hawaii, and I was with Clausy. So she was there when I was there. We got together all the time. And fortunately, a bunch of my sister in laws are in the Navy. So I got to see Tina and Sikorsky constantly every time they came. I got to see a few of your sister in laws when they came. It was I've been very fortunate with that. And I kind of learned a lot from all the duty stations, but I've had so many jobs that they've all given me something to take with me as I go along and kind of learn from that.
Mhm. How do you like field artillery itself as a branch?
I love it. So I love artillery. Uh, when I actually get to practice it, it's great.
Yeah.
But as an officer, there's all the staff work that goes with it. So it's not always fun and games. But I would like to think I'm actually a pretty good staff officer. But I do enjoy going to the field. So I think that I got kind of lucky being assigned a branch that's very good with my personality. Um, and I got lucky with that because some people hate their branch.
Mhm.
Uh, but I definitely love it. I love it when I can practice it.
Yeah. I would say field artillery as a logistician is one of the tough ones because there's a lot of like ammo. I just keep thinking of all the like different dodics that for all the ammo and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, field artillery as a like from a logistician point of view, I'm like, man,
You're not the only one who
same.
said that. Every
Yeah,
logistician I come in contact with, they're like, God, you guys have so much going on.
I know.
Like, oh God, we got to plan
So
this.
many rules. So many rules for ammo. Oh my goodness. Yeah. And how much it weighs and
Yeah, I think in Hawaii it was definitely a challenge because we didn't have as much land to actually work with.
yeah.
Because in Fort Liberty, I was HIMAR, so we had the big pods,
Mhm.
but we had a lot of land there in North
Yeah.
Carolina. And in Hawaii, it's like you got this little spot, and this is the only place you can have your ammo. And I know the logisticians were just going crazy with that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's It's always a challenge being a logistician. But I mean, I feel like, yeah, it would be fun, like the actual like craft behind the field artillery and like getting to do it seems like it would be a lot of fun. As long as you have ear pro.
Yes, I'm partially deaf in one ear, so
So now you're at VMI as an instructor. How did that kind of like fall into place?
So, I got put here, but the Army started something different, right? So they started, you had to interview for these new jobs.
Mhm.
And at the time, I was a battery commander in Hawaii. And VMI, you can see where people kind of rank you. And VMI had
Mhm.
ranked me pretty high, and I had never done an interview with them. And then, I ended up setting an interview close to my time kind of ending, where the board was ending and movements and stuff. And I knew I wanted to come back to Virginia. And so I was pretty much interviewing for every single job in Virginia, because I did love it. And I grew to love kind of the small town feel of Stanton, and I love
Yeah.
Stanton. And so I wanted to come back. I was originally skeptical about coming back to VMI,
Yeah.
because while I enjoyed my experiences, not all of them were the best. But I didn't know kind of what my role would be coming in.
Mhm.
But when I interviewed, it was just like any other interview, and I ended up getting the job. So I ended up coming back full circle.
Yeah, that's really cool. Like, because I mean, when we were in VWIL, like we all of our instructors, were men.
Yeah, and so I bring that
Yeah.
up, and a lot of people are like, "Is really?" And I'm like, "Yeah, like there were no females, like
Yeah.
at all."
Yeah, they were like, yeah, we had no female instructors. And like I can only imagine being in VWIL now, like having like a VWIL alum as my instructor. That just has to be like such a good feeling to have like that example to look up, to be like, hey, like this is what's possible through this program. So that's got to be exciting for them. But I guess how does it feel for you um instructing at VMI?
I honestly, I thought that I would have kind of a hard time coming back to this environment. Well, I knew it was going to be a rough transition coming from a commander's position into an instructor's role. As a student and as a cadet, you didn't really realize how busy instructors were and everything that kind of came with that job. And it's a lot. It's a lot more than I ever thought. And I'm not saying that it's like a hard job. It's nice to come back at the end of the day and I'm not working
Mhm.
until like 2000. Um, but there's a lot of like little office things and logistical things that you have to take care of that I never knew that our instructors had to do. Um, but I thought my hardest transition was going to be relating to my VMI cadets,
Mhm.
because I remember the tension between VMI and VWIL.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, they're going to hate me. And, there's going to be that tension there. And I honestly feel like that it wasn't there. I feel like most of the tension actually came from the VWIL cadets. And
Mm.
that was kind of what took me off guard, was I felt like I would be able to relate to them more, but I find myself closer to my VMI cadets, and probably because I see them more every day, because I thought it was going
Yeah.
to be easy to transition, like, from here, Lexington, and commute to Mary Baldwin, but it doesn't work the same way now that it
Mhm.
did when we were in school, because our instructors came to us. It's not the same way now.
Mhm.
So all the cadets from MS1 to MS4 year have to come to VMI. Whereas as a VWIL cadet, I remember our MS1, MS3 instructors, they mostly came to us,
Mhm.
and it's not like that anymore. And I think that's probably where that took me off guard the most and was the biggest adjustment for me, is not being able to actually go to Mary Baldwin as much as I wanted to, because it is a 40-minute drive and there's
Yeah.
a lot more things I have to do, and I have a son now, and so I can't just like not be there to pick him up from school. And so that was kind of the most surprising thing in this job.
Yeah. Me and Jenna were kind of talking about like the tension between VWIL and VMI. And I think part of it is just like we had like a mindset going in there, like we needed to prove ourselves. So I think that is like a potential cause of tension. But I also hope like hopefully maybe that mindset has changed a little bit on like both sides. I don't know. Um it has been 10 years, so I'm like, I mean, it could change. And a lot of things have changed, at least in the K through 12 environment. So I'm like not sure what, a Gen Z student looks like at VMI or VWIL right now.
Oh, it's different. It's definitely different.
Well, I'm excited to hear, like, how is it
Well, so,
different?
it's funny because they'll say things, and I'm just like, I don't understand that. Like, there are certain things where I just, I'm very empathetic, but there's certain things where I'm like, I don't get why would you do that? But
Yeah.
to each their own. I think the tension is still there just a little bit, but I don't
Yeah.
think it was as it's. I will say it is not as intense
Yeah.
as it was
Well,
when
that's
we
good.
were kind of going through the core. But I would say that even then, some of the guys that I graduated with who were VMI cadets 2014, I still talk to them now.
Mhm.
Um, and I was a commander with a VMI grad 2013. And, he and I were just like butt heads, but we worked very well together because we understood each other. And so I think that is kind of still there, but we also don't have as many sister school cadets as we used to
Mm.
have. So that goes for SVU and WNL and Mary Baldwin. I think we honestly have more WNL cadets than we do Mary Baldwin.
Yeah, when I talked to Colonel Patrick, earlier, it the numbers for Mary Baldwin are low.
They're very low, yeah.
Yeah.
And, every school is kind of hitting that and being
Mhm.
so close, VMI is very lucky that it has 3 sister schools it can,
Yeah.
like, pool cadets from,
Mhm.
um, but everyone's suffering. Like,
Yeah.
every single school has very low enrollment, and it kinda shows when we look at
Mhm.
our classes, and I think kind of the 2026 was hit. It was like that butt end of COVID, that kind of class.
Mhm.
They got hit really bad. And so they're very, very small.
Yeah. Yeah, and what a lot of people probably don't realize, the only reason I know this is because I of my master's program in higher ed, is that in the next in at the end of 2025 is like an enrollment cliff because right around the time I started college, so 2008, 2009 was when, well, both of us started around that time, was when like the recession was kind of like in full
Yeah.
swing. And so people just stopped like having more kids, like so the birth rates, went down pretty significantly. So the number of like 18-year-olds that are going to be entering college is going to dramatically drop like by 2025. So there are going to be a lot of schools that are already struggling, that are going to struggle more. And yeah, it's so a lot of schools are going to really have to like kind of step up how they recruit. They're really going to have to like be creative with their initiatives. And then military in general, just like trying to get students interested in that route, like recruiting like DOD wide is down, like
It's
it's
hard. Yeah.
yeah, it's
And
tough.
on it, I had this discussion with a few of my peers who are instructors as well. And we were kind of looking at it as like, man, we're not only instructors, and when I say we have a lot of duties, recruitment is one of them, right? Like, you gotta recruit these people, and we're kind of in that position where we are very lucky, where we have a population who is probably interested.
Mhm.
But kind of, recruitment numbers are driven by what financial aid we can provide these cadets
Yeah.
at all levels, because WNL is more expensive than VMI, and
Mhm.
if you're out of state, that's more expensive than in state, and then each school has its own laws in regards to that and who they're admitting as in state versus out of state. Even if you join the National Guard, through Virginia,
Mhm.
VMI is not recognizing that as you being in state now, even though you serve that state.
Mhm.
So it's kind of a fight with who's offering the most money,
Yeah.
and the military has to be like, we are.
Yeah. Hey, money talks,
Yeah,
like,
it
I mean,
does.
that's the main reason, I went Army is like, I was like, how do I pay for college? So yeah, it's an important factor. And that's why I think like I don't know if you follow like the VWIL alum corps group or page.
Mhm.
But yeah, they're doing a scholarship and raising money for the scholarship. So like if anyone's listening and, is interested in donating, definitely follow that page
Yes,
and
please donate.
yeah.
I think that's a good cause, because I mean, even Mary Baldwin is more expensive than VMI,
Mhm.
and they're both public schools.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it's all about that money, man.
Yeah. A college, I took a finance management course last semester, and a college, it really functions like a business. And, you know, education is a commodity, and you need students to buy that commodity if you want to survive. So
Yeah.
it's, you know,
It's
it's
always
it's
right.
tough.
Like, you said that you were getting your degree in higher education. I just got my master's in higher education, but
Oh,
my focus has been diversity in higher education, and so I was really trying to work on the aspect of or the lens of like, how can VMI diversify, its campus, and
yeah.
just in general the military, how can we diversify ourselves, because we're still fighting that fight.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big topic. The class that I'm might be late for, we talk about, yeah, we've been researching a lot of like college access, especially for minorities, students that like are first generation students. So like their parents didn't go to college, or based on their socioeconomic status, like where they might not be able to afford college. Like how do you, recruit those students? And like show them that, it is possible and that there are venues to get that financial aid. It's like, how do you build those bridges? So, yeah. And I think VMI is a great school, but yeah, there's a lot of systems, like systematic issues that, still need to be overcome. But like there's only one way to overcome that, and that's to like have change from within that institution.
And I do think that VMI has started, right? So
Mhm.
I always bring this up, and a lot of people didn't hear about it, but the whole court case that went on with VMI in 2021, sorry. And VMI did a whole facelift, pretty much. And so they're still in the very beginning stages of trying to implement their diversity plans, and their recruitment plans and everything like that. But I honestly, seeing it from where it was from 2010
Yeah.
to where it is now, it has gotten better.
Yeah.
But it's just, and honestly, it is nice to see kind of how many changes have been made and where these changes are. And I see it as an instructor, and formally seeing this before,
Mhm.
and I honestly think that it's going to hopefully keep getting better. But I am seeing those small changes, especially as an instructor and within my cadets too.
Good. Yeah, I mean, that's good. I honestly didn't know that. So it's good to see like that commitment and to see that like they're actually following through with those plans. So I think that's awesome. Okay. Speaking of your son, uh
That all just flew over here.
we can transition, switch gears to the topic of motherhood if that's okay.
Yeah,
Um So, what has becoming a mother kind of taught you about yourself?
patience, 100% patience. Yeah, I think I growing up and then even in college, I was a bit of a hothead, and I got better with that as time went on. And, when I graduated and stuff, but I was still very much just kind of making decisions just like that and not really having patience for anybody, let alone myself. Um, but having my son definitely taught me patience, like 100% taught me patience.
Yeah. Kind of
But
forces you to slow down, right?
it does force you to slow down, but kind of speed up because you don't
Mhm.
realize how fast, and everyone says that is like, you don't realize how fast they grow up. And, as a new mom, I was like, yeah, okay, sure. But it's very real. Like my son is huge now, and I feel like I just had him. But it's literally been 7 years ago. So
Nice.
but
What grade is he
yeah,
in?
he's in first grade.
Mhm.
So, and moving from state to state, because he's lived in 5 states. He's 7. And so yeah, military brat.
Yeah.
So, and each state has different laws in terms of education.
Yep.
So he went through this period where we were in Hawaii, and the age to go to kindergarten was 5,
Mm.
4 at the time, but then he moved to Texas and he was able to go to kindergarten. But then when he moved back with me in Hawaii, he still didn't meet that age requirement. So he had to go back to pre-K, even though he had done kindergarten time. And so when we came here, he had to go back to kindergarten because he was in pre-K in Hawaii. So it's been a transition with his grades.
Yeah, it's so tough because I taught middle school at Carson Middle School on Fort Carson, and yeah, like having all of those different rules for different states. I really admire like that student population because they have to go through like a lot of changes, and I mean, it's probably the most like the student body of like military children have like the most perseverance because they're constantly being put through change. And like as a special education teacher, like I write the individual education plans, the IEPs for students that have them, and each state is different how they write them too. So yeah, it's kudos to having to deal with those moves because it is challenging, but also like I think military students tend to be like more have a better ability to persevere just because they are constantly going through so many challenges.
Yeah, and honestly, I think that was one of the hardest challenges for him is he was always around so many military kids, and here he is not.
Yeah.
And so we stick out like a sore thumb because
Mhm.
we're used to something else. And,
Mhm.
he claims Hawaii. We lived there for 5 years.
Yeah.
So, that's what he knows the most. And most of the kids here and their parents have grown up here.
Yeah.
So they all know each other and everything like that. And so that was his biggest transition, was trying to relate to the kids
Mhm.
here because we see things so differently,
Yeah.
because we were always on the go.
Yeah. Okay. I have one more question related to parenthood for you. Um, can you share a memorable moment that either encapsulates the joy or even the chaos of like motherhood for you?
Honestly, and a lot of my sister-in-laws have met my son. But he's actually a really like chill kid. Like he's very opposite me. Well, most of the time I think the best thing is because he's so relaxed. Um, but it's always just been me and him. And so he understands like my bad days and when
Mhm.
I'm exhausted and I just want to like pass out on the couch. And he kind of takes on that caretaker role, and he'll like cover me with a blanket and
Aw.
just like check on me a little bit, and he'll just like leave me be and he'll be quiet. But for the most part, like he's so calm. I mean, this is usually him playing with himself, like kicking the soccer ball back and forth, and we call it a day. But honestly, I think those are my best moments. And those are kind of what I look forward to, walking him to school. I used to envy moms who were, me cielo. But I used to envy moms who would, I would see them on post and they would be able to walk their kids to school. And I knew that I couldn't do that in a normal military setting. And so here, like, we live 5 minutes down the road from his school. So I get to walk him to school like pretty much every day. And I think that's one of the things that I love the most about being here and stationed in Lexington.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's cool that you get to walk him to school every day. Like, yeah, it's like I can imagine that those little things are kind of what add up the most in the long run. And it sounds like he's very sweet. So it sounds like you lucked out.
I did luck out.
Yeah.
I 100% lucked out.
Okay, so I am gonna switch topics one more time. I didn't know this about you, but I recently discovered that you're a Taylor Swift fan.
100% Swifty.
I didn't know until I think I added you on Instagram, and then I saw your stories and I was like, whoa. I was like, not just like a Taylor Swift fan, but definitely a Swiftie. So like on a scale of 0 to 10, how big of a Swiftie are you?
10. And honestly, anyone who I work with at VMI will tell you 10. So
That's hilarious.
I last year I worked with two people who, one still works here. They were not the biggest Swift fans, but I would blast Taylor Swift all the time, and I would show them, because Sikorsky and I were going to the Taylor Swift concert in Tampa, and I was just showing them, hey, this is what I'm going to wear. This is my outfit for that concert. And even this year, like, I've been surprising he was my former NCO. I've been surprising him hiding Taylor Swift stickers all over his office because he is not a Swiftie.
That's hilarious. So you went to the Eras tour?
Yeah, Sikorsky and I went.
What were the surprise songs when you went?
Honestly, I can't remember. Like, her and I were fangirling the whole time that it was, and we were so lucky. Like, we just, like, the traffic was good. We got through the gate, which originally they stopped us because they said my bag was too big, which it was a concert bag, the clear bag, but they let us in. But I was like, I will throw this bag away. But there were no lines to get food or drinks, and we stood there and we screamed our lungs out the entire time.
Nice. Yeah, I went with some friends to the show in Arizona. So the very first weekend, it was cool, very cool. And Paramore opened for them, so I was just like, woo, double whammy. It was amazing.
My throat was like, I think both of us probably lost our voice. But I loved it. I loved it so much.
Yeah.
But huge Swiftie. And I think she and I, we just keep sending each other like Taylor Swift gifts. So she got me like a bag of Taylor Swift stickers, which is what I hide around my NCO's office. So
Yeah. Honestly, you could get lost on Etsy with like all the amazing Taylor Swift stuff. Like,
I wear a Taylor Swift sweater when I drop off my son, so everyone sees it.
I've got some Taylor merch on right now. It is the 13th, so
it is. Oh my God. April is mine and Sikorsky's month. Just saying, because we went to her concert April 13th, and now she's supposed to drop the new album in April. Like, April is our month.
Yeah. Did you think she was gonna that was gonna be the announcement?
So no and yes. And what's funny is Sikorsky and I were actually texting back and forth, and we watched the Grammys at the same time. And because she texted me and she was like, hey, my cousin said that her site went blacked out, and like it completely blacked out, and you couldn't buy anything, you couldn't do anything. And I was like, oh, so maybe she's releasing something.
Yeah.
And so we knew she was going to make an announcement. We did think it was going to be Reputation.
Yeah.
Am I a little upset? Yes, but I'm super excited that she's releasing a new album. And I texted my NCO and I was like, it was late at night, and I was like, guess what she just dropped? And he was like, oh God, please stop.
And like the album itself, I'm like, wow, this is gonna be an emotional roller coaster. I can already tell.
I love her emotional roller
Yeah.
coaster. I live for them.
Yeah. I too was a little sad that I was in Reputation because I honestly love Reputation.
Is that
Like,
your album? Is that your go-to
you know,
album?
like I love all of her stuff, but I did go to the Reputation tour. And that album live, like just the way she performed that live, it hits different live, and it's an amazing album. I think it gets overshadowed, but like there's so many songs that weren't singles that I think are just amazing on that album.
It
So
does have a lot of amazing songs on it. I would say so the first CD I ever bought with my own money was Fearless.
mhm.
And I remember on my little CD player jamming to it, taking my SATs, ACTs. Like I remember that. But Fearless was like is my overall album, but out of her last three, Evermore,
Yeah.
like I love it.
Yeah. No, I loved that transition for Folklore and Evermore. Like I
Oh,
love that sound for her. It's great. And just like with the combination of her lyrics, so good.
that's why I'm very excited to hear this new one because
Yeah.
I'm hoping it is kind of a mixture of Midnights and Evermore slash folklore. Like I feel like it might be kind of that vibe.
Yeah. That would be cool. Yeah. I'm excited for it. Um, so I do have like a few closing questions. So the first question is, if you could go back in time and talk to your college self, like what advice would you give yourself? And then after that, do you have any shout outs or plugs that you want to make as we kind of like close out this episode?
Honestly, if it was advice to my college self, I would just say keep doing what you're doing. Like I think I found my way in a good way. Like I experienced a lot of bad during that time, but I think it only made me better, mature faster as I continued on. So I would have done everything the same in college, like as wild and freaking crazy as I was. I would have kept it because it kind of gave me a lot of experience, especially the way I was in high school, transitioning to college, and then as an officer. I think it only made me grow faster and made me better. And so I would just be like, do it, do it. If you're considering it, just do it.
Yeah.
But shout outs wise, just my sister knows I love you guys. So and they all knew I was coming on here, by the way. And we talked about it in book club.
Aw, that's so cool. I always get nervous when people tell me they listen. I'm like, actually, you actually like listen? Is it okay? Like it's not boring?
No, so we legit went on this kind of little rant, and because in book club we kind of gossip the first 30 minutes, maybe a little bit 40 minutes, and then we get to the book, and then at the end we just like give each other like, hey, you should listen to this or you should read this. And Sikorsky was like, oh my God, you guys should totally listen to Barrett's podcast. And I was like, oh my God, she asked for me to interview. And so we were talking about some of your episodes, and all of us were super excited about Colonel Patrick's episode. And so Sikorsky actually just finished it, so she's probably going to hear this and be like, "Oh shit!" but yeah, so you are definitely a topic on our book club.
Wow. I'm touched. I'm honored. But I will give you a shout out. Colonel Patrick and I talked about you off of the podcast, and she was talking about there was a parade where you were administering the oath, and some cadets in color guard fell out, and a lot of people kind of just like froze and didn't know what to do. And like you, like she like gave you so much like admiration and props because you kind of just like took charge and
Yeah, I
like
just walked up in the middle of the parade.
and just was like, Earth. like this, like started like, I mean, you were decisive, you were a leader like that. I mean, you did what you were taught to do, so yeah, you got a shout out from Colonel Patrick. So
Aw.
yeah.
Oh, that's special.
Yeah, she had great things to say about you. Honestly, I don't know what I would have done in that situation either. But yeah, I think that goes back to kind of like you always had like a natural leadership ability and you're very decisive. So kudos to you. It's been great to kind of like hear how your journey's gone and see you grow and develop as a leader. And I'm sure like great things are still on the horizon for you as you like continue with your career, whatever you decide to do in the future. And I'm really grateful that you came on. I know this seems like it might have been a little rushed, but I do have class. But honestly, we got through all the questions and this is the best time I've ever made. So maybe I'm maybe I'm just becoming a better host. I don't know. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me.
For having me.
Yeah. This has been fun.
All right. Go to class. Good
Okay.
luck.
All right. Thanks for listening to the All Girls School podcast. But before class is over, please take a moment to subscribe or leave a review on Apple or Spotify podcast. If you enjoy video content, head over to our YouTube channel at All Girls School Podcast, where you can watch and listen to each episode. You can also follow us on Instagram at All Girls School Podcast, and you can email us questions, stories, and more at theallgirlsschoolpodcast@gmail.com. That's it for today. Class is dismissed.